All right, we've got UFC Fight Night coming up this Saturday. Uh, it will be your last night in Toronto, getting to watch UFC for quite a while, and then you'll be moving on. But first, let's hear that preview of what you got for us this weekend.
Yeah, a fight 2 years in the making. Kelvin Gastelum versus Robert Whittaker. This fight was supposed to happen for the middleweight title 2 years back in Australia, with Whittaker having to pull out the day of or the day before within like 50 hours of the fight after weigh-ins due to an emergency hospitalization. So you've got to feel so bad for Gastelum how that played out. And then he was one round away from getting that title shot. Izzy stole it from him isn't the right word. Beat it from him maybe is. And he had a tough run from there. Started to turn things around with his last matchup against Ian Heinisch, which was huge just for the legacy and considerations of Gastelum, because like I was saying before that fight, he didn't have any wins over top 15 contenders under the age of 35. So going up against like a prime athletic age middleweight and outskilling them was really important for the stock and considerations of Kelvin Gastelum, and now he gets a chance to continue that momentum by going up against Robert Whittaker, who and I think a lot of people consider the number one contender at the middleweight division. Injuries, I think, is going to be a big part of the segment later when we get more into the NBA stuff, which almost has me a little reassured, gratified, because I was kind of sulking this week. Like, man, MMA is such a frustrating sport for injuries. We had last week's main event getting taken away with Till having to pull out weeks before. Whittaker's supposed to go up against Costa. Costa had to pull out. This isn't as good of a matchup. It doesn't do as much for Whittaker, but still a fun one. Like I said, Whittaker, I think, is the deserving number one contender. He should have gotten a shot after that Cannonier win, but he has to go out and get one more win. And it's kind of a chance for him to put on a showcase. I mean, the 1 month notice of this fight means there isn't a full fight camp of game planning and practicing and getting certain motions down to an automated state. But having had that fight camp 2 years before, which they did the Ultimate Fighter, so Gastelum been on Whittaker's radar for a long time and vice versa, which definitely makes it interesting. Whittaker, a really tactical guy, and I do think for the most part he should have this fight in the bag and a chance to just put on a showcase against Gastelum, because he's just that elite a fighter, the number one middleweight contender. One thing that I think doesn't show up like in judges scoring and maybe get considered after the fights is he's managed to inflict 2 injuries on his last 2 opponents that really helped him win the fight against Darren Till in that 5 round like chess match of a kickboxing contest. Whittaker in the second, third round landed one of those stomping keep kicks on Till's knee and really damaged the mobility of Till. I don't think it ended up being like an ACL tear like some people thought, but Till couldn't really move for the latter half of that fight, and that was a huge part in Whittaker taking those later rounds. And then against Cannonier, he like broke the arm or like made an indent fracture with a high kick when Cannonier was trying to block. I mean, those high kicks were money for Whittaker all night. He was constantly throwing them so quickly. He'd throw a 1-2 and then like whip a high kick in there right behind it. And Cannonier had to be sharp on that all night. And eventually one snuck through, wobbled him, and Whittaker almost put him away. But I'll be curious to see if he can continue that streak of not scored but very useful injuries and damage inflicted on opponents. The reason I feel like Whittaker has this in the bag for the most part, though, is kind of the same thing I was saying about the last Gastelum fight, where I think Till just put out this really straightforward, easy to follow highlighting Gastelum's strengths and weaknesses game plan against him, where at distance, Gastelum didn't have too much. Um, Till did fight as a southpaw. Whittaker's an orthodox, so that's a little different, but he managed to really neutralize the hooks and the in-close striking by clinching up Gastelum. And Whittaker, like I said, just such a tactical guy. I feel like he'll be able to take that game plan. He's so good at range. His reflexes are phenomenal. He keeps his hands so low, but manages to get a read on the striking and stay out of danger. Those high kicks are going to be money against a southpaw fighter. But it's an MMA match. Anything can happen. I thought Gastelum was going to get totally technically outstruck against Izzy, and he managed to turn that into a really nerve-wracking 5-round back and forth match, hurting Izzy twice. So Gastelum definitely has the power in his hands to make it interesting. The clinch work from close could go his way if Whittaker isn't in all the right places and perfect. You saw Heinisch in the last fight against Gastelum try and implement his own grappling, and Gastelum was able to reverse position and get to a more dominant one every time. I mean, Whittaker, like GSP-esque in no formal wrestling background, but just being a great athlete and having a great sport IQ, is a great wrestler. He competed for Australia in the past. So I'm hoping to see a couple grappling exchanges to see the difference between those two there. But yeah, I'm hoping to see a showcase from Whittaker. No one's stopped Gastelum yet. Izzy got very, very close, but didn't. So put a stamp on that contender run to earn a title shot and do something no one's done. Show off the tactics, show the improvement since the Adesanya lost, because he did get into trouble just rushing in there and getting caught. So show you can do that and not get caught against a dangerous striker. And you should have this title shot in the bag. So looking forward to that performance and see what's to come from Whittaker. Also, we'll definitely have to check out the highlights replays of the Askren Paul boxing match, but I've said everything I've got to say on that. So should be a good weekend for combat.